What's up, the internet? I continue to be Kyle. I am joined once again by my partner in crime for this weekend, Miss Jena.
Hi.
And we are joined this hour by America's Thom Zahler.
Hey, how are you?
Very good. He puts that first word on there, and I've always wanted to ask. So, Thom, are there international versions of you? Like, is there Canada's Thom Zahler and a Uruguay's Thom Zahler, or
Ireland's Thom Zahler?
There is an Ireland's Thom Zahler. Yes.
Ooh.
That's me, because I am part Irish. Yes, I would like. I haven't met the rest of them, but it's like Batman of the world.
I love it. I love it. So, for anybody watching who isn't familiar with Love and Capes, why? Why aren't you? You've made a mistake. But tell them about the book.
So, Love and Capes is a superhero romantic comedy. It's about a superhero who says, I love my girlfriend and I'm going to tell her that. But if I tell her that, I have to tell her everything. So, is there ever a good time to tell your girlfriend you have X-ray vision? What does she want for Christmas when she knows you can crush coal into diamonds? And just this very week, it got nominated for a Ringo for Best Humor Comic.
Nice.
Yep, that was going to be my next thing. It's Ringo nominated. So, how does... And I know Baltimore is a special convention for you. You know, I know you and Christy talk fondly about Baltimore. So what is that like? How do you feel after the nomination?
This is the first time I've been nominated for a Ringo. I was nominated for the Harvey Awards once or twice before. It means a lot, especially coming in at I think this is the 5th year of the Ringos. It's pretty close, but maybe the 3rd. But it feels like, just from a math point of view, that it's easier to get nominated when nobody knows about it. So the more people know about it, the more people are voting. So the more heft it takes to get in. So it means a lot that I could get in. I was friends with Mike, not super close, but we knew each other professionally and through a couple of groups. And he always had a sense of fun and whimsy in his comics. And it means a lot to me to be nominated for the award named for him.
And I will say that I, as a industry professional, I quite like the Ringo Awards because I get to vote. So I can support my friends in this way, whereas some of the other awards, it's a little more nebulous as to who's voting for what.
Yeah, so, I say that the Ringos are kind of like the SAGs, the Screen Actors Guild Award, where other actors are nominating each other. So kind of the same way, like other professionals are nominating each other. They have a really cool way of having judges that can be weighted in, and a large mass of people. Like, anyone can vote to nominate, but the actual nominations have to be voted on by the pros. And I think I think it is a unique blend that gets you people that you wouldn't get noticed by other awards. Like there is an award in comics that has said that, for instance, My Little Pony will never be nominated because it's a licensed comic, no matter how good Katie Cook did on it. Mine were okay, but hers are great. And I think with something like the Ringos, you don't have that sort of corporate mentality that keeps anything from breaking through. Like 2 years ago, it was Batman Elmer Fudd, which is just this insanely awesome comic that shouldn't ought to be. And I feel like other places would not have recognized it for the comic it was.
Right. Absolutely. So what led you to become a creative?
Oh, I was dropped on my head a lot when I was a kid. So severe head trauma is really, really important.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does, because you don't want to be sane and get into this. That will only hurt you. Aside from actually doing a head out of a shopping cart when I was 2.5, my parents used comics as a reward system, and I was reading from a stupid early age. My dad was actually Machiavellian in teaching me how to read. He would do phonics books and do 3 pages with me and then stop, so that I was always saying, well, Dad, let's do more. He's like, no, we'll do more tomorrow. And then freaking taught me how to read at like 2.5. So I love comics from the beginning, and that became like the reward system. So they had a really well-behaved kid, and I had a lot of comics.
That's the best reward system ever.
Right? Especially like I hate to sound all old and stuff, but 70s, 80s comics when there were a lot of done-in-ones and a lot of like weird stuff, and there were reprints of stuff in Super Team Family and like bizarre Justice League issues, and like it was just such a great time to pick up comics, and there was so much in them, but they all felt complete. They even things that were part of a story felt like you read a complete story, and I don't think there's as much of that now. Like on Halloween, if I'm home, because I tend to be at conventions a lot, I will give out comic books along with candy because I'm not a monster. And it's becoming harder and harder to pick up comics at the store to be able to give out. You're like, oh, this issue of Batman's kind of not appropriate for 7-year-olds. So
they Diamond did bundles a few years ago of like Halloween Comic Fest books.
Right.
So they were all ages books that were specifically, and they're smaller and they're samplers. And I ordered so many of them, I'm still giving them away. And like some of these series have come and gone and ended, but you're right. Like that's a killer thing to put in somebody's like Halloween bag, like just a comic book. Like they love it.
Yeah. And I do feel like in the 70s there were less guideposts. Like Justice League was always, for the most part, all ages appropriate, but you could still find your way to, or better yet, Spider-Man and Captain America were all ages appropriate, and you could find yourself to the X-Men, which was written for a different age group, but it wasn't so written for a different age group that you couldn't find your way to it. Where now, like, if you're reading the Batman animated comic and you like that, there's no other comic in that world to go to next. Like, it is in its own sandbox. Right. And then if you're going to go to different versions of Batman, you have to learn what that version of Batman is.
Absolutely. I mean, I like to say that I came up in the 80s and 90s before there was safety. And it's the same that, it was definitely the same for comics. Like I was reading Preacher way younger than I should have been reading Preacher because I was able to find Preacher from other stuff. Like it wasn't like somebody's like, hey kid, you should read this really jacked up book. It was, well, that's the Vertigo logo, and I see this other Vertigo, that's DC. Should be fine. And my dad's like, at least he wants to read. Let's buy him this book. And then we get to like the 8th panel of the first issue where it's an angel and a demon, doing it. And dad's like, okay, just don't tell your mother. So I love that idea that, you came to comics because comics were there and that you found all the different ways in. Where did the story for Love and Capes come from? Where did the concept come from?
It comes from lots of places because I have a deep and abiding love of sitcoms. I like romantic comedies, but some of it came about when Superman got engaged in the 90s. And I think there were production reasons for it, but he got engaged and then 7 months later told her he was Superman. And it seems to me that you need, like, when you get engaged, you should leave everything on the table. Like, oh, I'm Catholic and I'm scared of spiders and I fight crime. Like, that should come out and you shouldn't hide it. And I kind of think they did it because if the reaction was so negative, they would be able to walk it back. They could break them up without having to reveal the identity. But it kind of came from there, and I thought it was really interesting to do the point at which a superhero decides to open up and trust his significant other with the secret, because it's this huge trust issue. You have been lying to them for a long time, but there's a good reason why you're lying for them. But are they going to see that as a good reason for you to lie to them? And and then there's a whole, if you live in a world of rock stars, you date someone who's normal, that person is going to be thinking, why are you with me? Like you live in this, if Brad Pitt comes to date you after dating Angelina Jolie and Jennifer Aniston, you do kind of wonder, like, but you're in that world. Why are you in this world? And I thought that was interesting to play with too.
Yeah, no, I love that your three things were I'm Catholic, I'm scared of spiders, and I fight crime. they still haven't addressed the whole space alien thing.
Well, he's not a space alien. He's actually human. I've never said how he gets his powers, but
I was talking about
reference
Superman.
to his mother being pregnant with him.
Oh, I was talking about Superman.
Oh, Superman.
Well,
Yes,
I think she already knew that. She knew, like, you're like, oh, I'm Superman. You've done all of these interviews. You know, I'm an alien.
Yes, exactly.
Right, but like, you
But
need
that's
to have
a lot
that
of
conversation
processing.
about like,
Yeah.
Is it all the same? Like, you need to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like,
I got engaged 2 years ago after 10 years together, and he still was like, by the way, my family's from North Carolina. I was like, okay, well, that's why I can't understand when they talk. I got you now. Yeah. Okay. Wish I would have known that sooner than 10 years.
Right. So, Love and Capes has been around a while now. How long have you been doing it?
I think I started in 2005, technically, but the first issue came out publicly in 2006 because it was released at comic conventions before it went to Diamond. It came out the same weekend as Superman Returns.
Well, there you go. That's a good way to remember it. Because I remember the first time copies... I can remember the first time we started ordering copies for the store. And it was a little later than that, but we carried it pretty regular through Diamond up until we closed the store. And I remember thinking that this is a great book that mom and dad can get and that a kid can consume, but there's something for parents too. Like it's very Shrekian in that way, where it's you know, the kids love it because it's a superhero story and it's funny and it's light and but also there's some real stuff in there that appeal to the little bit older audience that they're like, okay, there's something for me in this book too.
Yeah, it's something I considered because it was part of Free Comic Book Day for a few years. That was the biggest thing that got it noticed. And you're supposed to be kid appropriate for Free Comic Book Day. You don't have to be kid friendly. Like, it doesn't have to be written for kids, but it has to be written so that if kids read it, nobody's going to freak out. So it's got to be broadcast TV. It can't be HBO. And that sets you up for, it gives you certain guidelines for what the book is about. And I think that, yeah, it's still bright and colorful and hopefully it's funny. I mean, my goddaughter read it from far too early in age too, over and over and over. And I would every once in a while throw in a joke that she probably shouldn't have read. But on the other hand, if you get my double entendre, that's not my fault.
Right. It's Animaniacs going, did you search for Prince? And one of them comes back with Prince. Like it's it's a little over this pay. It's a little over this age group, but okay, I get you. This year, I think, was the first year that rule was gone for Free Comic Book Day. They actually had 3 different banners for MA, all ages, and YA.
Did they? Okay. I was at My Little Pony convention for Free Comic Book Day this year, so I didn't get to.
You had a better time. You had a better time.
I'm going to say I did. At a My Little Pony convention, I'm a left-handed pitcher, and at a comic book convention, I'm a great utility infielder. Like at the pony convention, they got me a handler, and I kind of want that at every show I go to now. Right. At one point, I was going to go to the green room, but I had to go to my room first and drop something off. And my handler said, "Do you want me to have a drink ready for you when you get to the green room?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I used to dress up as Pinkie Pie.
What about Pinkie Pie?
I used to dress up as Pinkie Pie. Me and my friends did the whole ponies as equestrian girls, and we went to the local children's hospital that's here. Excellent. And my hair, I would have sugar-free candy in it, just in there, because I couldn't get the cupcakes to work.
Okay.
I always pulls out cupcakes. I couldn't do it, so I pulled out sugar-free candy that the nurses okayed.
It's good that you went to that extra effort to check that, because I would hate to see you walking around with essentially sugar bombs in your hair and wanting good work.
But it was so much fun.
So, how far out do you have kind of Love and Capes planned?
6 pages.
All right.
Literally, in this case, 6 pages. So when I do Love and Capes, I did the first issue to stand alone. And once I did the first issue, I said, well, if I do one, I'll do 6. So for me, every 6 issues is a season. There's always an arc to it. And so it was their dating year, their engagement year, their newlywed year, their first year with a kid, and then we jump ahead 5 years, and now they have 2 kids. And I knew how that season ended. And then what I started doing, kind of to process a lot of stuff that was going on, because you may have heard there was a pandemic. I did Love and Capes in the time of COVID, which is on Patreon now. And that is dealing with the heroes going through the pandemic. I had a backup plan to get out of it if I ever needed to. But I just thought it was interesting to deal with all the universal stuff that we've had to deal with. Like not so much dealing with the problem itself, but for me, like my parents took it way too casually at the beginning. And it's not like I think you have to be perfect and clinical and, but I just wanted them to take it like, again, I'm Catholic. And that first week that things shut down, the Catholic Church said, you don't have to come to church this week. And that never happens. And my dad said, well, I went to church. I'm like, why? Like, stay home for the novelty of it. Like, this never happens. Like, you're 78. You're the age group I'm worried about. So those kind of universal things, I thought there was enough interesting stuff to go on, and especially dealing with superheroes who would have to be out in it. And, I found reasons to, which heroes would be vulnerable to it, which heroes wouldn't, and all that kind of stuff. So I have that plan through page 48. Like, I know roughly how this issue ends. And then I actually don't know what happens next. I need to have that 6th issue planned out before I can aim for it. But I'm going to figure it out pretty quickly, because the 2 things going on is there's a lot going on with Darkblade and Amazonia and a lot of the background characters that's really interesting for me to deal with. And 2, now that they have 2 kids, there was a very clear arc for their son, because their son is about 6. And I knew what I wanted to do with that. Their daughter is like between 1 and 2, depending on when you're reading it. So she's more furniture than she is a character at this point. And I want to do something that is unique to her, because once she starts talking and once she starts interacting and developing more of her personality, like, I need to, just out of a sense of fairness, make sure that the other kid gets enough attention too. As you can tell, I grew up in a family with 5 brothers, or 4 brothers. I always think of the 5 of us. So I want to do that, but I don't have that figured out. But usually when I start a Love and Capes, I'll have 6 issues planned. The only reason I don't on this one is that Love and Capes was as much therapy and figuring out how to replace comic conventions and a lot of the income that I was losing. So that's what allowed me to launch the Patreon. Because once I had a structure in place for me to launch a Patreon, then I knew how to do it.
So you mentioned Patreon, and I'm going to come back around to Patreon, but you also mentioned being a left-handed pitcher in the world of bronies.
Yes.
Which is great. I love that scene. I am not a participant in the pony scene, but I love being around people who are, because they're some of the most joyous fans ever. There isn't a cynical one. A cynical one amongst them. They just love it. What is that world like as a person who's like, you told us our stories?
So I don't take any fandom lightly. I think there's a temptation to do it. Yes. I mean, I even see it with, years ago I had this epiphany about San Diego Comic-Con, where people would complain about going to it. And I'm like, but if the worst part of your professional life is when you have to go to San Diego for a week and talk about the thing you love most in the world, it's not that bad. Like, yeah, it's a pain to ship all that stuff, but it's not that bad. And I'm a Star Trek fan, so I'm used to socially awkward people who like something a little too much, which is mostly how I've dealt with the My Little Pony audience. Because I came into it mostly mercenary. IDW was publishing the book. They were publishing Love and Capes at the time, and I said, could I do a cover? They said, would you like to pitch the book? I said, I'm not an idiot. Yes. And then I mainlined the show. I was surprised. Like, it was a much different, much better show than I thought it was. And it became really easy to pitch for, and I identified with the characters. And it's a loving, passionate audience. And I've had some of the most incredible experiences from that. The one that I talk about sometimes is I was at a show in Calgary, and this one kid comes up and is talking to me, and again, likes things too much. The conversation's going on a little long, and you're starting to have the thanks for coming by. You're like, I'm Catholic and I can take a lot of punishment, but it's just going on, and you're trying to figure out where to draw that line. But I stayed with it, and he walked away, and then his mother comes up, and his mother says, my son's autistic. He doesn't speak. And I just watch him talk to you for half an hour. And when that happens, like, that keeps you in check the rest of the time. Like, I'm so grateful and honored to be able to be part of something like that. That it keeps you from being too arrogant or too dismissive or anything like that with anything else that happens.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I did BronyCon one year. I mean, like, and I did it because I knew that it would be a good time because everybody was going to be there to have a good time. At every other convention I've ever been to, there's somebody who's there that's like, all right, I'm going to get over on every dealer I can get. You know what I mean? But no, that's not how those conventions are.
Mm-hmm.
Those conventions are, we love this thing and we just want to celebrate it. And you have interactions like that. People who are, you might be the only person they talk to that day or at all. And you just, that fills your heart. You're right. You know, just, So, what are some other things, how do I ask this question and not sound like a dummy? Do you have other stories? Do you have other stories? I can't do it.
Okay.
I can't do it. I'd have to prepare. And even then, I'd probably sound like a Dalek. But do you have other stories like that of conventions where it's, hey, you're, Love and Capes or My Little Pony or anything else where it's people have come to you and kind of told you how it's affected and changed their life? And once you have those stories, how does that affect the future creation of the project?
I have had more of those. The other one that comes to mind is I did a comic for Webtoon that's not collected called Warning Label, which is about a girl who's cursed by her ex-boyfriend that every guy who asks her out gets the warning label of what they need to watch out for. And there's a guy who stays with her and he writes a warning label of his own and they slowly become better people. And someone came up to me at a New York Comic-Con and she was crying because she told me the book made her a better person. And like, my problem is that growing up on so many 70s and 80s sitcoms, like I just want to be Jack Nicholson and it's as good as it gets and go, I overshot the mark. I was just trying to get you not to leave. But I can't, I'm never going to take that lightly. Like, it was just an amazing experience. Like it doesn't affect what I'm doing because the story is the story is the story. If the story's right, the story's right. It's got to be true to itself. But what it does is it gives me guideposts for interacting where I just, like, I've been on the other side of the table. And there's always a point where, like when you go through one of those lines to get your photo taken with one of the actors, like, it's not that I think I'm going to change the actor's life or we're going to bond or, Tom Cavanaugh and I are going to hang out and get coffee. But it's just, you want that one moment where they know that you're in the world too. And kind of, like, I'm very, like, nobody can come up with, okay, don't test this. For the most part, nobody can come up and trip over their words and just babble. And I'm always I'm going to be gracious about that because I would want someone to do the same thing for me. You know, like I got to meet Patrick Stewart from Star Trek. And I mean, fortunately, I've been planning for this moment for 20 years. And I only had a couple minutes. And I got to say, you know, obviously I love being in Star Trek. And your favorite thing that you've done for me is LA Story. Because nobody talks about him in LA Story. And I just love that. And he's like, that was quite some time ago. And that's all I needed. And I took off. But like, it doesn't, it's the kind of thing that, especially being in a convention and you're like, it's like being on a first date for 4 days and you're trying to be personable. And it's the thing that keeps you from going off the rails and just being the bitter guy behind the table. Because when some 9-year-old's coming up to tell you about My Little Pony or some webtoon fan is coming up to tell you about this thing, like, you know how important it is for them. And I've been in that situation too. Like there's no bad way to tell me you like what I do. Like I know what you're trying to say. Yeah, I don't know how to say this without being super arrogant, so I'm just going to say it. Like, it's like that scene in Superman 2 where Superman catches Lois in the elevator and she's freaking out. And she's like, Superman, there's a bomb in the elevator. And he's like, I know. I got it. And that's what I wanted. Like when you're, you know, when you can't get words out, not forming complete sentences, like I'm going to help you through it because I've been there.
Got it. Yeah. I've never been starstruck per se. I mean, from a young age, like right out of high school, I was working with people who would be considered celebrities until I met Alan Alda.
Okay.
And I could not form English words. It was just sounds. Mm-hmm. And Alan Alda's like, so you're a fan. And it clicked, and I was able to then explain to him how a certain episode of MASH led me to learn improv and learn acting and led me to the careers that I've had, and it's all back to one episode of MASH. Mm-hmm. And it's an episode he wrote and directed and starred in. And so, like, it's his fault I'm here. And, you know, but it took him de-escalating the situation from this huge thing for me. And so I appreciate that. But like, and I love the fact that you said the story is the story is the story. If the story's right, it's right. I wonder, is it hard for it not to become something you aim at?
Hard for it to become what? I'm sorry?
Not something you aim at.
Yeah, I don't want to
turn it a little into. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want to preach. Sometimes I know the audience I'm aiming for, like when I'm working on My Little Pony, but I want to find the one true thing to talk about. And once I do that, everything kind of falls into place. And I'm trying to avoid writing the very special episode of anything. You know, I want to write something that's good and that people get stuff from. And I think it's, you know, there are so many universal experiences that we can talk about and explore that you don't have to reach too far. And like the show that is currently I'm obsessing on it. It doesn't know I exist is Ted Lasso. And on Apple TV, and it's just awesome, but that show is the show we didn't realize we needed, especially during the pandemic. And because I don't want to spoil it, because it's a magical show, but the dart scene, and when he says, be curious, not judgmental, that scene is everything. It's in the middle of this story about a guy who moves to England to play soccer, but that is one of the most amazing, important, challenging things that I've seen in a TV show. And it's in the middle of this comedy.
I have to talk about this because every time somebody brings up Ted Lasso, I love that the guy who's responsible for Ted Lasso also brought us Spin City and Scrubs and Cougar Town.
Yes.
Like, it's
Cougar
all
Town
Bill
is
Lawrence.
Vastly overrated. Underrated, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's phenomenal. But then what's crazy is that 3 of the first season episodes of Ted Lasso are directed by Zach Braff,
Mm-hmm.
who was stuck in London because his girlfriend was shooting Black Widow.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's all so tied to this thing. Yeah. Like he went to London because his girlfriend was shooting Black Widow, and then the pandemic happens. And he's like, well, I'm stuck here. Oh, hey, Bill Lawrence has a show here. I wonder if I can get work.
Goodness.
But life finds a way.
Right? Well, I was going to say, sitcoms find a way. And it's true. So, we've been asking everybody some similar questions because one of the things here on the Experience we try to do is highlight the local comic shops.
Okay.
Do you remember your first local comic shop experience and what store it was and where?
Comics and Collectibles at the Shoregate Shopping Center.
Is it still there?
Run by a guy named Ed Music.
Okay.
Yes, I was there every Saturday and then every Friday night. I had a pull. First place I had a pull list. First comic I started getting regularly was DC Comics Presents the Superman Team Up book. It was the first place I saw that had comic. It was the first place that was just a comic book shop.
Do you know, is it still around?
It is not. I think Ed has gone through the post office and retired, but I know people who work for him, including Mark Andreyko worked at that shop. That's where I met Mark.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Mark actually went to school out here and had my aunt as one of his history teachers.
It's a small world.
It is.
Very.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was the very first one. They're more in town since, and I tried to be very accommodating. Sounds wrong. I try to make sure I stay in touch with them and work with them because they're so important.
Mm-hmm. Right. Talk to me about Patreon. We had Jarrett Whalen on yesterday who does a Patreon. We had Thom Hutchison, who Big Dog Inc. has a Patreon. You said Patreon was a way to kind of deal with the pandemic and the shutdown of cons and that kind of stuff. But how has the Patreon kind of model affected like the way you work and the way you create?
It's given me a different pacing, I think, because with any system like that, I need to, like in my head, I need to figure out how it works or how I can make it work. Like I understood what Kickstarter was, but I had to think of a project that I could do that would work for Kickstarter. So the same way with Patreon, when I realized that Love and Capes is built on a 2x4 grid, so that's 4 panels and a joke, 4 panels and a joke or a beat of some sort, that I could put up a page a week, which is slower than I normally do on Love and Capes, but it wasn't like I wasn't doing other stuff during the week. And it was a manageable goal to say, okay, I'm going to do 1 page and patrons at one level get the page, patrons in another level get behind the scenes and there's sketch of the week kind of stuff and lost stories, and it builds up from there. But figuring out what kind of paradigm I was going to use to put stuff up there, because so much of it is I'm going to do this thing on a regular basis, and it's hard. I've had experience with that with the webtoon model where you're putting stuff up once a week, but you also have to make it a manageable chunk. Like I could turn out essentially 10 to 12 pages of comic, 5 to 6 pages of comic a week to do webtoon, but webtoon was also giving me money. So it was harder to figure out how to do it for Patreon because you're not assured of how much money you're going to get. So I started smaller. I'm going to figure out something past that, and then it's got to be based on it. It's based literally on the whole mercenary. How much money am I getting on this that I can devote to it? Because I want to make sure that I'm hitting the deadlines and saying that I'm going to do the thing that I'm going to do, but I also know how much money it brings in, and I have to make sure that it's taking up an appropriate amount of my workday. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. I put the link in the comments, so you can click that right now if you're watching, and go over and back Thom's Kickstarter or Patreon. It's been a long weekend.
Oh,
So
My brain just blue screened of death just now. It was real bad.
I keep having little moments of like reboot, just like what?
Yeah. So Jena and I are into our 15th hour this weekend.
Has it?
And yes, no, it's more than that.
Yeah,
I can't
because
even
it was
math.
from
So
10
we're gonna keep
a.m.
going.
to midnight yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was on here at 10 a.m. No, 9:30. Time.
Yeah, time is a relative construct. So we're gonna keep moving and go on to the next thing. You do a lot of conventions. I see you at a lot of conventions. I know you do a lot of conventions. Is there a convention you can't wait to get back to, not because of the convention, but because of the food after the convention?
Oh. That's tougher. Because there's a dinner I have at Baltimore, but that's probably the people. Dragon Con is definitely the drinking. Yes, Chicago. I had to think through it, like which one, but Chicago has Pizzeria Uno and Pizzeria Due. I love Pizzeria Due. It's got Thom and Montoya's, and it's got Ghirardelli chocolate. So
good.
And it's a driving show for me. So I will make sure that I get out there early enough on the day before the show that I can go have lunch and then go have dessert.
Well, speaking of dessert, I have the most important question of the day. Are you ready?
I'm sitting down.
So I've asked this all day today because we actually have a house of pies here. If you could only eat one type of pie for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Taking a pie filled with $20 bills off the table. I'm gonna say apple, specifically like was it French apple with the crumble on it?
Like an apple strudel?
Not quite a strudel. It's just got a crumbly top,
like a Dutch apple.
Oh, okay.
I will take Dutch apple. I was over at my aunt's house for lunch today, and we had apple pie.
There you go.
Yes,
yes,
so,
most important.
Mm-hmm.
What conventions do you have planned out for the rest of the year? Where can people run into you?
I have a stretch coming up where I'm doing 7 shows in 8 weeks.
Yay!
But that 8th week is Thanksgiving, so I'm sure that will be a break.
Is the 8th show San Diego?
What about San Diego?
Is your 8th show San Diego?
It is not,
because that's Thanksgiving week.
Yeah, I'm currently not planning on doing that. They haven't sent us anything about doing it. I love my space at the San Diego Comic-Con, so I want to make sure that I'm being clear about this. I question some of the decisions that they have made in that show.
I just am trying to find somebody who is going, so I could talk to them about preparing for a show.
As far as I know, they haven't released the information for how to go to that yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen a single thing for anything.
Yeah, and I think like I used to do Mid Ohio Con, which hands down was my favorite convention, and that was a magical thing that took place over Thanksgiving weekend, but also it was Saturday and Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend. So like you could still have Thanksgiving on Thursday, travel on Friday, have the show, and it was this perfect experience. Having a 3-day show where you have to travel on Thanksgiving the year after not being able to see people, like I think there's going to be a lot of inertia there to overcome.
Yeah.
So the shows that I'm doing,
I miss Mid Ohio so much.
Oh god. Yeah, I just had lunch with Roger Price a couple days ago, and he appreciates it when people tell him how much they miss the show, and he's going to say that no, he won't do it again. But I think it's also kind of a lightning.
Never ask him.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No.
I completely understand why he's past the point of wanting to do it.
I have lunch with Gibby at the Ogre once a month, and we always talk about the good times at Mid Ohio, and we always talk about how great it is that it doesn't exist anymore for the people for whom Mid Ohio was their entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
You know, so what do we got? What do we got coming up? I got to stop reminiscing.
I'm going to be at Dragon Con next week. I'm going to be at Cincinnati Comic Expo, and then New York, and then this is where it gets crazy because those are not the 8 shows. Because then it goes. I might get the order wrong, but it's going to go Baltimore, Denver, Grand Rapids, theoretically Homedale, New Jersey, Grand Rapids, C2E2, Emerald City. I know I'm missing one in there, but Bayou City in Houston, which is mid-October, first part of November. So that's all I have planned.
That's all.
Yeah.
My October, I'm only home 11 days in all of October, and I thought that was a lot, and then you just told me that, and now I feel like a schmo. So
no, you're far smarter than I am. No, this is a stupid schedule. I have made several mistakes.
You're gonna feel like a schmuck by the
right. I added one before, so I'm doing the experience will be at Oxeye MediaCon in Saginaw, Michigan, the end of September. After we're at Monroe Pop Fest mid-September.
Okay.
Then I am at the International Edgar Allan Poe Festival in Baltimore.
Oh wow! Do you all go in the same gutter?
Of fun. Kinda, actually, yes. Because the festival is in the street where Poe's house was.
Okay.
So kinda, yes. But then it's home for a day, New York, home for a couple of days, Columbus for a week because that's how it's going to work out for my nephew's first birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Home for a whole week, Traverse City for Cherry Capital Comic Con.
Okay.
And then some time off, then Grand Rapids, and some time off, and then C2E2. But it's like, your show schedule, I'm envious of. I love doing that kind of stuff. Like, that's the stuff I live for.
Are you insane? No, it's more.
I love
yes, I am.
Here.
So
I am. I mean,
I see the problem that I run into is that I would love to be paid to be Thom Zahler, but I have to make things too. So it's hard to go from doing the show to going home and making stuff to sell at the show and then doing another show. And there's not a lot of I'm kind of at the point that if I get home, as long as I wake up in my bed at 6 o'clock in the morning, I'm okay. But if I come in at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, that day is shot. You know, it's just going to be me unpacking and watching Netflix. Like, I can't get back up to speed. I try not to rely on too many crutches, but there are things that help you do work. You know, sleep. Like my coffee in my studio and stuff like that. So I try to get back as fast as I can. But like turning out a weekly comic is hard when you're at your Cintiq once every 3 days.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky when I go on runs like that. It's me with a book bag, a camera, and some microphones. Like as long as I've got a laptop and an internet connection, I can work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little different. It's a little different.
Yeah, I've gotten really good at getting a lot of stuff done on the Cintiq. Well, not done, but I can get it like almost done. So when I take it here, I can ink it. So like I can do tight pencils, but I can't make the iPad look like my Cintiq does.
Right.
And then relevant to your comment about the book bag, I feel like every time I leave a city, I just hear the Incredible Hulk music as I'm playing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
So what do we have in the future? What do you have planned out? What other projects do you have that you're working on?
Did you not hear the 8 conventions?
Well, I mean, in terms of work.
Yes.
In terms of non-traveling, convention-related work, do you have plans for new things for 2022? Because it'll take you till then to sleep off the conventions.
Yes, I am planning on doing more Love and Capes. I don't know exactly what comes after In the Time of COVID, but I've got about a month and a half to figure it out, and it'll come to me.
In the time where COVID came back?
No, COVID's gone. I ain't doing this again. I don't like drawing masks on characters. It's hard to get the expressions.
It's all about that eyebrow work.
Mm-hmm. And then I was getting irritated drawing, the mask around their neck. And a friend of mine, Joe Murray, pointed out that they should just have the magical marble costumes that just disappear and fade. And then I did a whole bit about that where somebody invents it and the Doctor Strange character is like, that's not how science works. No, that's not how it. So I'm going to be doing more Love and Capes. I'm figuring out how to do more Cupid's Arrows because season 3 is not going to be on Webtoon. So the current plan is that I'm going to do one a month on Patreon and do slightly less Love and Capes, but throw in Cupid's Arrows because I have more of that story I want to do, and I left it on a horrible, horrible cliffhanger. So I apologize for that, but I know what I want to do with it. So I'm gonna go on from there. I've got a couple things I want to pitch or are being pitched that I can't talk about. And past that, it's just conventions and commissions all the way down.
Cool. If you could give a piece of advice to you starting in the industry, what would it be?
Learn how to do taxes and put more money away for retirement. I'm not sure.
That's a real good answer.
Yeah, that's the best answer.
When I talk to kids who want to be artists at my table, I tell them, look, to take art classes because you're not an idiot. Take speech class and take accounting. Because you need, especially in a world with Kickstarters and Patreon, you need to know what those numbers are. Like, how much will it cost you to make a book? How much does it cost you to ship a book to a convention? Because if you're going to do this as your living, you need to know that stuff. And I have to be able to speak to editors to pitch things because you don't want to just go, oh, I got the story about measured time traveling winery, and you probably won't like it. So you need to be able to express, because I've known people from art school and beyond who I don't like talking to people. Okay, well, this is going to be harder than you think.
Yeah.
Once they hire job in advertising.
Yeah.
Everybody's on the phone for things. You got to know how to talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's just texting. Those would be the big thing. I think that would be maybe start earlier. It's hard to figure that one out because when you go, I went freelance in late 2001, completely freelance. And I probably could have gone a few years earlier, but I don't know that it would have felt right about it. Because when you go freelance, you're accepting the fact that sometime you're going to wake up at 3 a.m. and questioning every decision you've made. And when you're in that position, you have to know, I totally put myself in this position. This is where I want to be. You don't want it to be, oh, that me from the future kind of talked me into that. Bastard. I've had people who ask about it. I'm like, you will know when it's time, and it won't feel like you went soon enough, but that you don't want to wait too long, but you don't want to go too quickly. Because I tried being freelance immediately after leaving the Kubert School, and when I worked this summer doing caricatures at an amusement park, and it just wasn't feasible. I wasn't getting enough work to make it happen, and I wound up working in an ad agency, and that was great and a great experience. But you need to know that you're where you're supposed to be, because otherwise you're just going to question every other decision you make because you won't feel confident about it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, I went freelance 6 years ago doing this kind of stuff. Freelance media consulting and freelance kind of broadcasting for people. And it felt like I should have done it earlier. And then I got that first tax bill and realized I didn't know what I was doing yet and should have waited longer. So it's an interesting kind of conundrum to be in.
Yeah,
sure.
I had a number in my head that I thought that I needed to be making to go freelance. And there was a point when I felt like I couldn't hit that number as long as I had a day job, because apparently I have to sleep. And I made the jump, and it turned out when I ran my numbers that year, I had passed that number by the point I decided to go freelance. But it doesn't feel like that, and it's
right.
I've had people say they couldn't do what I do because they don't like knowing where their next they don't like not knowing where their next paycheck's coming from. And I tell them, but you don't know what your next paycheck's coming from. It's just that I know what my boss is doing about it. And I like that control, but it doesn't, it doesn't always feel awesome all the time.
Right. I mean, my boss is making me work from a hospital this weekend. Like, he's kind of a jerk, but also he's going to take me to New York Comic-Con. So, like, trade-offs. So it's one more time, tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can find you, where they can hand you money.
Yes. You can give me money just about any way you want. I take kidneys, whatever you got. I am at Thom Zahler, ThomZahler on Twitter and Instagram. Thom Zahler Cartooning on Facebook, and patreon.com/Thom Zahler. You can also go to thomz.com, THOMZ.com, and that'll take you everywhere and show you everything I've done. That I admit.
If you see him walking down the street, just throw money at him.
I don't know. That's kind of weird. It's kind of weird not to it. I don't know. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, you're right. So the question I've been wrapping up with people, and I like to wrap up with questions that people can't possibly be prepared for.
Oh, good. Is like my career. Go.
Well, and the question I always ask, I started off asking everybody was, what's your favorite Pokemon? But I realized that question only gives you so much insight into a person's personality. So if you were stuck in traffic, what is the one record you could listen to for the rest of your life?
Oh, wow. Okay. Honestly, it is probably the Some Kind of Wonderful soundtrack from 1989.
Okay.
William Shatner's
strong answer.
Get a Life is really strong, and weirdly, because it's not a great movie, the Daredevil soundtrack is really good. But no, Some Kind of Wonderful is just absolutely listenable from top to bottom.
Okay.
And, awesome. And I like having a soundtrack because it's not all the same artist.
Not many people think that way, and I like that approach, because now I'm rethinking my own answer and going, is it the Guardians soundtrack? Guardians of the Galaxy, because you get some great, across the board.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You're making me reconsider my life choices here, Thom.
I've always liked soundtracks better because it's not always just one type of music. You can get quite the array of things.
Yeah, and I love ones like the Back to the Future soundtrack that will have a bunch of songs and then the anthem.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Or I was just thinking, man, Disney had all those Phil Collins records that are actually soundtracks.
Oh yeah.
Those would be good.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Jena, do you have any more questions for Thom?
Now it's stuck in my head. Don't do this to me. What's wrong with you? Come on.
If she's gonna do that, I'm gonna make you pick a favorite pony.
My favorite pony?
Yes. What's your favorite pony?
Yeah.
It changes based on the one that I'm writing. Honestly, it is currently Pinkie Pie because I get to write a lot of the Pinkie Pie cheese sandwich relationship stuff.
Yes.
I like Zecora a lot for about 3 pages, but she rhymes everything.
Yeah.
And that gets old real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, right now it's Pinkie Pie and cheese sandwich.
Have you seen so there's this person on YouTube who made their own videos of a pony called Flufflepuff. She's an earth pony. She's all fluffy. And she and Queen Chrysalis end up together. And it's great. She doesn't talk at all.
Okay.
She just makes noises like, wee! And you're just like, what kind of magic are you? But yeah, definitely, if you like Pinkie Pie, you should definitely check out Flufflepuff.
I will do that.
Like 2-minute episodes of just her throwing a taco at Chrysalis and Chrysalis being like, why?
I wrote a Pinkie Pie joke that Hasbro loved and immediately cut from the script. There's a 3-parter that I did where all the ponies turn evil, all the main 6 turn evil. They become different supervillains, and Pinkie Pie becomes the Joker, obviously, and she is dodging Nightmare Moon, who's like throwing energy blasts at her, and Pinkie Pie says, miss me, now you gotta kiss me. Oh, that will start a whole new fandom. And Hasbro said, we love this line, cut it immediately. I can't believe you wrote that. I think was the exact
Like,
name.
come on. They left it on that. Has everybody seen the last episode? Don't care. I'm going to talk about it. So they in my opinion, the way they left it was that Applejack and Rainbow Dash are a couple. Like, they're like, I could have helped you. And she's like, but you're so slow. And it's like, they're already living together on the farm. So I don't know why they became rude.
I think it's more writing it 5 years. Like, you can do a lot of stuff in your finale that, you know, you can burn a couple bridges on the way out on that one.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Did Kyle just like, okay.
I just got a little bit yelled at. So I had to reposition. I was sitting in a way that's not conducive to healing. Whatever. Anyhow, so one more time, at Thom, it's
at
Thom
Thom
Zahler. Make sure you put the H in. If you search it without the H, you find the wrong guy.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, Thom, for being here. Thank you for being funny when I couldn't be, because my brain just reset every time.
Can't stop the signal.
Hey, and I look forward to seeing you in New York and probably a couple other places before the year's over. So we'll see you very soon, my friend.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, everybody. This will continue momentarily. We have Adam Freeman. We have Adam Freeman coming on. Adam is, like me, someone who has had a lot of jobs in the industry. He wrote them all out earlier, and it's a big wall of text that I'm very excited to talk to you about. So we'll be back in just a couple minutes here on The Experience. Yeah, stick with us. Jena's going to try and recover.